Welcome back. We're continuing on how to review working with the aggregate functions and how it structures to go along with that using Oracle and SQL. Again, we're talking about the aggregate functions. We're looking at working with an entire column of results within the value we're talking to, rather than using an operation on a single field like we've been working with before. Again, just as a quick review, when we're talking about aggregate functions, some of the quick little notes, they're working on the entire column. They're all going to be math-based. All of them that we're working with for the aggregate functions, the parameter for them is going to be the column name you're operating on. However, there's one small exception, asterisk of course, is count. I know, it's a cheesy bad joke because count has asterisk as its parameter. I know. Okay, remember you always want to use as and then name your result that you're doing this, because when we're talking about working with a result from a function, we want to make sure we describe the result as the column title for that, rather than simply leaving the whatever gets parsed out of that function call we're doing right here in this trunc average blah blah blah. We don't want to give that right there. We want to actually give it a name for this that will actually make sense. One of the biggest reasons for this is we want to make sure that when we're sending that result set to something besides simply just a console display, perhaps we're sending it as a result set for a Java, C# or Python database interaction program. That result set that comes back, the metadata that goes on top, the column headers, that's something that would actually be used for the actual program. We want to make sure that's useful information rather than just like a truncated bit of data. Oh no, we want actual useful data from that. So that's one of the things we want to make sure we do for that. We also want to make sure when we're presenting that information, we present the appropriate information. If we are displaying information that perhaps may have a higher security level or has information that should remain anonymous, like say for example passwords, usernames, etc., we don't want that to be revealed inside this part right here, inside our function information, which theoretically could reveal that. And so we want to make sure we use the as something to name those results, to properly give that information the appropriate masking and hiding that it should have when we're displaying information to the public. And that's for when we're naming our results. Finally, last bit on we're working with the functions. You can nest your functions just like every other function we have. And so I have the truncate of the average of the GPA column to two places as GPA. And so again, we can use it. We can nest those functions inside that, so we can perform math operations on the results because it's just another value we're working with. And again, remember, always use that as. The next bit we have is, of course, our group by clause. Our group by clause is how I organize my results when I'm working with aggregate functions. This is really, really key. You must include every single, all, big star lighters right there, the fields that are not included with an aggregate function in your select clause, because when you're using the select and then using fields on there, we have to find a way of organizing or grouping that, and that's done with the group by clause, and it's really, really key. This also compartmentalizes our results. This is when we actually see the effectiveness of the count asterisk function. Because if we do count asterisk just on its own right over there, we simply just get a count of the table itself, which 90% of the time, not very helpful. However, when I use that group by clause, I'm allowed to actually see the results that match a certain group of information. So I get, oh, there's 8 things that match this category, but there's only 13 that match this category, and there's 5,402 that match this category right here. This is where count gets really, really helpful. And this one is going to be executed before the select clause, of course, because select is almost last. But also you want to make sure that the group by clause, when you're looking at the actual structure of it, it's going to be executed after the from and join clauses, as well as the where clause. Because when we're grouping this by, we've already selected the tables and put them together, and then we've already limited our results right here. So that's where that's happening. Now, the next thing we have is our having clause. Our having clause is optional. You don't have to have a having, but we use the having to winnow the results. It's a funneling clause, and so that's how I funnel, filter, or limit my results when I'm working with a function. I want to limit my results based on an aggregate function. Like, so I want everything to be below the minimum of something, or above the minimum, or below the maximum, whatever we're looking at. You can combine these with and or, so you can have multiple different functions you're combining together inside that having clause. It can be as complex like we just have in aware, where it has multiple things on that. And so that's how I can group by multiple, or group by. That's how I can have multiple different ways to filter or limit my results. And this is going to be executed after the group by, which means, of course, it's executed after the from, it's after the join, and after the where. However, this is also still before the select, because again, everything besides order by is before the select clause. And so we're keeping this in mind. That's a quick thing we can do. Reminders about how we can work with the having clause, the group by clause, and how to actually go the basic structure of our aggregate functions. Hope this is helpful for you. Cheers and have a great day. Thanks.